Ah, welcome back to the Don't Panic podcast with myself, Yariv Wolok at Wolok on Twitter, if you haven't been on this for a while, and my partner in crime.
Chris Maher, how's everybody doing? It's been a while. It's been like 2 months since we last did a show, I think.
Yeah, no, more. It's been more.
More?
It should be 3 months because I was in Israel for
Yeah.
2.5 months. I think we did an episode. No, we didn't do one right before. So it's been like 3 months, dude.
Yeah, it's been
The
a while.
entire off season. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I will say, at least now that we're doing it again, we have a lot to talk about.
Yeah, we do.
Like, a lot.
We have a good amount to talk about, especially today.
Yeah. And it's good. It's exciting because there's been preseason, there's been camp, there's been dev camp, all that stuff is behind us. Some waiver stuff going on. Not just around, not just the Flyers, but around the league as well. I think I saw Sarnik was waived today, which is interesting. So Austin Sarnik. So that's a guy I could see getting, picked up by a team. But overall, man, just exciting time. Yeah. Well, so where should we start with this, Chris? What do you think? Should we start with?
I mean, I feel like we should
games?
go. Yeah, probably. It's the most recent, and probably the waivers and stuff after that.
Yeah, totally agree. So, I guess let's start at game number one, and then we'll just go through them quickly. But so the Flyers lost the first preseason game, 3-2 in overtime. Game against the Islanders, I guess B squad. No, it definitely was B squad, right? Some of their higher talent weren't in that, so it's a little upsetting to see. But they did lose on a very nice goal by Beauvillier, who scored like seconds into overtime.
Yeah.
The Flyers did crawl their way back into that one. What did you think about that first game against the Islanders?
I thought it was all right. I mean, I felt like most of the guys that you expected to play well played well, and the Drew Couturier connect me line I thought looked good. I mean, I thought really all through camp they looked good. Why shouldn't they? I mean, they are the best players. But overall, I mean, I feel like if the Flyers were to replay that overtime, it probably wouldn't happen the way it did, and it was kind of just a rough play on the turnover, and then no one really got back, and there was a miscommunication, and I feel like Beauvillier, he's a pretty good player, so obviously if he has a chance like that, he's going to score, and he did. So I felt like overall it was a decent game. It kind of sucked for the Flyers, obviously, since they ended up losing, and I felt like both the goals weren't necessarily any of the goalies' faults either. They were screens in front, and the one was a power play, the other one was even strength, and Hart really couldn't see too much on that one from Pelech, and the other one from Dobson. Urson was screened. So, but I thought both goalies played well. I feel like Hart has had a pretty good preseason in the games that we've seen him. But overall, I thought that game was okay for the most part.
Yeah, I think okay is the right term for it. There were some good things, some bad things. I did think Hart in that first game looked pretty sharp, especially for the first game back. He just looked really quick on all the pucks, made saves when he needed to. Like you said, the goal itself wasn't his fault. Ersan played well, I thought, as well. Not great, but I thought, again, for a first game against NHL pro talent, I think he did all right. Maybe I'm sure he'd want to have that last goal back. But again, you got a guy, Anthony Beauvillier, who's arguably their best goal scorer, like pure goal scorer, coming in on you on a bad break by the Flyers. And
he just roofed it. Like there really wasn't much to it. He just fired it.
It was a goal scorer's goal, 100%. And it's interesting to watch that game because it's a prototypical game where, and I think the Flyers suffered against the Bruins too, and we'll get into that game also. But when they play the Flyers, when the Flyers play players that do the little things, like a lot of the bottom six guys, I feel like that's where they actually struggle sometimes. It's not always like the star players that give them problems, that they have trouble like just sticking to a simple game plan and not making mistakes. That was the case last year. The previous year before that, I would say not. I think they handled that really well. But it shows, like, why you miss a guy like Kevin Hayes, again, the guy Scott Lawton excels in that type of game. Maybe a guy like Lindblom as well. But I think that's why the Islanders give us so many fits. They play that. I don't know if you remember many of these games, but that Lou Lamoriello New Jersey Devils hockey team, like they were never even the most talented team, but they always
Just the way
played.
they played.
Yeah, they just always play to their max potential.
Yeah.
Whatever it is that he knows how to do, that's top down, and obviously it's Barry Trotz as well.
Right.
But they know how to just play, like they can get the most out of their role players. Something that a lot of teams struggle with. So they always seem to have a really good bottom six, right? And I think that's kind of what we saw against the Flyers. Like the Flyers won, essentially came back because of talent,
Right.
but they lost the game probably just because mistakes. You
Yeah.
know?
And again, it's the first game, and I feel like the preseason, I feel like a lot of times it gets overanalyzed. You know what I mean? Like especially like
Yes.
the early games, like there's so many things you can sit there and talk about, and what a guy does well and what a guy doesn't do well. And I mean like me and you were talking about it before we started, like the special teams, which I'm sure we'll get into, but that's something that could be overanalyzed and also just looked at as you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I think for the most part, I think really the one game that I have focused on the most myself was the Saturday night game against Capitals, 3-1 win,
Sure.
because it's probably the closest thing you'll see to the NHL roster. So I thought that was probably the best game they played because of the players that were in it, and B, just the one that you could focus on the most because, as I said, it's the closest thing you're going to see to what the lineup will be on the 15th against Vancouver. So
For sure. And again, they did play a B squad there, just to note that again.
right.
But there was some talent in the line, like a Kuznetsov played, right? But there was definitely some talent in the lineup, but it wasn't Washington at their max either. I do want to say, just to end this first game wrap up, I will say in that first game with Ryan Ellis and Provorov, and obviously we see this pattern already in the other games. I thought that Provorov and Ryan Ellis, that was like fantastic to see. Like Ellis was all over the place. I think probably his best preseason game was that first one where we actually lost.
Yeah.
But he
looked good the other night against Boston too.
Yeah.
Even though he had
No.
the penalties.
That was the only problem with that game. I think he just lost control of his temper a little bit, which I like.
I
to
would
some
say
degree,
though
but bad
the
penalty.
first one was a phantom call. That was a bad call. I mean,
You talking about where? No, I don't think so.
It was a cross check, but they called it a rough, which it wasn't a rough. If you're gonna call it a cross check.
I'm gonna challenge you on that one because the cross check was to the guy's throat. And I think that's, if you look at that replay again, because at first I agree. When I first saw it, I was like, that is not a penalty. And I completely agree. Like that's where my stance was. But on the replay, you can see that the stick kind of came here. I don't know if the impact was that high, but I think as soon as the ref saw a cross check around the neck, I think that's really why he got that penalty. Because initially it just looked like a fight for space. It didn't look like
it was kind of
like the most egregious thing.
Yeah, it looked like it was just a play in the corner, and he got sent to the ice, and the arm goes up like, all right, 5-on-3 for 20 seconds. That's what everybody's thinking. And then he says Ellis. I'm like, wait, like, and then I saw the cross check because he did cross check him, and I was like, okay, that's fine, like, but that was not a roughing call. If you're going to call that the cross check, which I know that they've been really trying to like just take away, because we saw it in the second game where they called that one on York, which was very similar to the Ellis one. Really wasn't much of a cross check. It's
I would say
really
that's a much weaker call.
Yeah,
that was a weak.
I think that was just to send a message for the regular season, like we're not gonna.
No, and maybe there's really a hint of that too. I just when I saw the stick around the neck, like I was watching the game with my my roommates here, and they, I reacted the way I reacted, and on the replay, he's like, I don't know, he's like, it's right at his neck, and you look at the video. I would say take another look at it again and tell me if maybe you change your mind on that one, because I think the second penalty was kind of a stupid one on Ellis. That was, I think he just, again, he got heated, which I don't necessarily have a problem with, but
no, I don't either. I mean, in a
penalties.
preseason game, that's what you want from one of your veterans.
Yeah. So let's go into the second game. This is a game where the Flyers were outmatched, and the Bruins. This was an away game. The Bruins came in with not their, again. We say B squad and A squad. It's not really true. It's just some more elite players play in the home games than the opposite. But the Flyers kind of went in with a more sparse lineup, right? Sanheim and Risto were the top pairing. York was in there. It was an interesting. Yeah, it's Sealer as well, who obviously will probably be part of the opening night not lineup, but at least he'll be on the roster opening night.
Mhm.
But I thought this is a game the Flyers never looked like they were going to win this game. It looked like the Bruins were pretty much in control of the game the whole time. They scored the first goal. Farabee on the power play. Flyers went down 4-1, and then Farabee again on a power play towards the end of the game.
Mhm.
I will say this. I like the way JVR and Farabee looked in that game.
Yeah.
They looked legit.
Mhm.
I think Cam York looked stronger as the game went on. I think Sanheim and Risto had a good performance, but not their best game. I think they played a lot better actually as the preseason went on. What do you think about that game?
I mean, I really couldn't say it better. I mean, I think that if you're looking at it as the first game, as you did from the first night, that was really the first game for those guys that they've played in a long time too,
Right.
because no one from Group A played. Because it was really just Group A from camp, and then Group B was what they did, and then they kind of did a little
Nick Seeler, right?
Yeah,
He played.
they just put it all together, right? So yeah, I mean, I really thought all the same stuff. I thought York, as the game went on, he looked better. He was definitely better on the power play than he was 5-on-5.
Sure. Yeah.
I thought 5-on-5 he got beat a couple times. There was one play he had that it wasn't the best pass. It was would have been a breakaway if Smith was faster. But Craig Smith intercepted it and went back. But York had a good recovery on it. I thought there were some plays where he kind of got tossed off the puck a little bit, but he did make good plays to get back into the play. And that's one thing that I like from York is that even when he looks down and out, he really isn't, and he kind of just gets right back into the play. He doesn't necessarily look like he's out for the count and can't make a play on it. But
He's good recovery.
Farabee looked good. Yeah. Farabee looked great, and that's a huge thing. I mean, he led the team in goals last year. Yeah, right.
Yes.
Led the team in goals. I couldn't remember if JVR had around the same or what. I don't even want to remember last year, but Farabee, he looked good again. I feel like he looked strong on the power play, and that wasn't just that game. That was also
every game.
Every game. Yeah. He had a couple chances last game against Boston. And I like the one play Coots found a backdoor, and I was like, oh, that would have been nice, but Swayman made a good save on that one. But yeah, I mean, I think for the most part, I think me and you have talked about this before, that Farabee should stay with JVR, and they should just whatever center they can kind of fit in there is probably perfect. Because I think if you can have it where you have them together, I think they just have so much chemistry. It's like,
well, it works. I think JVR's continue off what he played last year. I'm not like I can't say I would argue that statement. Like I don't know if there's a better winger to put Farabee in, but I could see, and we've talked about this for sure, is I could see Farabee move up to the top line. You brought that up to me also.
Yeah.
He's just he looks so strong this year already. Like I wouldn't be surprised if this is even more of a breakout year for him, like building on top of what he did last year. JVR does look really strong though too. I think the problem right now is like when Kevin Hayes does return, because he will be back relatively soon, where is he going to fit in? If Frost doesn't end up taking that spot, right? Is Hayes going to come in there and just fit nicely? Probably, right? They showed they could do it. And with Allison not being around, who also had good chemistry with Farabee, Allison, we don't even know when he's coming back at this point. So I could definitely see it. The only other spot I would be willing to try him in without JVR at this point is see how he does with Giroux and Couturier. But there's also other combinations can be thrown. Like I do agree with you. I don't know if the coaching staff wants him as top line winger at this point, but he's playing like one.
Right. Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like if you look at it that way, then like where do you put Konechny, who's also looked, I think, just as good, if I'm being honest with you.
I think Farabee looked a little bit better than Konechny, but I do think Konechny looks right back. I just think so highly of Farabee at this point.
Yeah.
That like because Konechny is very good offensively, but defensively he's not as good as Farabee. And that's why I think Farabee just always has that edge. Like he's a guy I could play against the top players in the world, especially when he's fully seasoned. So it's interesting. So the Flyers lose that game to Boston. Everybody freaks out about Martin Jones giving up that one bad goal. Yes, it was definitely a bad goal. Having said that, it was his first game with the team.
Mhm.
And to what you were saying about York not playing well 5-on-5, I don't disagree with that statement. But I also didn't see an amazing 5-on-5 play from anybody
Right,
outside
right,
of Nick
right.
Sealer, who I
Mhm.
would say was the most consistent, but he's also
But
not
also
like a
took 2
dominant
penalties.
player.
So,
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like it wasn't a game where I go like, oh, everybody played 5-on-5 really well
yeah,
except for York.
right.
And that's where I kind of have a problem with like to make the NHL, in my opinion, you don't need to be perfect. Like I think
Mhm.
what you said about York was very astute, right? He has an ability to rebound quickly. Like if he
Yeah.
does get beat, he's smart enough and talented enough where he can get back into the play quickly. He can shut
Mhm.
down passing lanes, and that stuff is really important. Having said that, I still don't think he's on the opening night roster. I think the D is just ready with the vets available, and they're not going to sit him, right?
Mhm.
Um, let's get into the next game because that game against Boston kind of sucked. So let's talk about the game that you mentioned earlier. The Flyers put out close to their final lineup. I don't think did Sanheim and Risto play in that game? Yes,
Yeah.
yes they did.
Mhm.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah,
So
they're
that
both
was
veterans.
right, exactly, because Risto was super physical. So that was a game where I would say the Flyers dominated the game from what I saw, but
Yeah.
didn't dominate on the score sheet.
Mhm.
I wouldn't say it's concerning.
But 5 on
Preseason.
5, they
Yeah,
were all over
they
it.
carried all the play. They were
Yeah.
all over them the whole time.
Mhm.
The score is not indicative of the play. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry, cut you off.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm just like just to refresh everybody's memory, like the lines were Giroux, Couturier, Konechny, JVR, Frost, Farabee, Lindblom, Brassard, Atkinson, Lawton, Thompson, Albie Coupel, and then the defense was Provorov, Ellis, Sanheim, Ristolainen, Yandel, and Braun, and then Jones played the full game.
Yeah, there you
So
go. So
and
outside
those
of
were the
Hart,
lines that and those were the lines that they rolled all through camp consistently from day one on, and they just literally put them together from lines 1 and I think it was 3 played in the first game, and then 2 and 4 played in the Boston game. So you just put everybody together, and then the D pairs, like you had said, where Sanheim and Ristolainen played against Boston, and then Provorov and Ellis playing against the Islanders. So they just put everything together, and yeah, I mean, overall, I thought a lot of the lines looked good. That Giroux Couturier connecting line had chance after chance after chance. I
yeah,
don't think
we
they
know it
had any
works.
points. Oh yeah, I don't
I'll
think they
double
had
check
any
right now. Let me
points
double
5 on
check.
5. I know they had. I know Giroux had the power play goal. No, they did not.
Sick goal. I
Mhm,
love that. I love watching
yeah,
him wind up like that. Sorry, go
yeah,
ahead.
and that's the thing. I want to see more of that from G. If he's open, fire it. You know what I mean? Because I think that it's just another element of the power play that just gets that opens up. And um, we like I know me and you had a conversation about this over text, and this kind of gets into the power play. Um, but like the power play that game was fine, and I think when you see the goal like that, and you have the one timer, and you see the ability that can bring, it's good that Giroux's on the left, like that. You know what I mean? You want him in that spot because
Yeah,
that's his main spot. But I don't not. It's not that I don't necessarily hate the fact that he's on the right. Like I don't like it because I don't think it does much for him. But I haven't necessarily thought it's looked bad either, if that makes sense. Like I think they've had some good scoring chances with him being on the right, and I think the same thing with when you have Coots on that side too, or Coots is on the left. You know what I mean? Because
yeah.
in that Capitals game, there was a power play where Couturier was on the left, and he actually had a couple chances where he might have scored if I think the one shot got blocked and the one he fanned on it. But they set the play up where Yandel made a he's looked good all around on the power play, honestly. But
Yes, he has.
he had a couple good plays where he set it up well, and Couturier had a handful of chances on that side on the left. So I'm just curious to see how they do this because hey, when Hayes comes back, that's going to add another element of the power play that you can add really anywhere.
It's a huge loss for us. I
Yeah,
realize it. The more I think about it, the more I
mhm.
realize it. You know what I mean?
Especially defensively,
Yes.
and
5-on-5,
mhm.
physical.
And really the faceoff circle too. If I'm being honest with you,
It's,
um,
luckily,
it's everywhere.
Broussard is good at. Luckily, Broussard is good at faceoffs.
Mhm.
Which I know he did well in Arizona, but he actually seems like he's going to be a lot more serviceable in the middle than a lot of people anticipate. Which
Yeah.
is what happened in Arizona. He went in there as a winger, and they ended up using him as a center anyway.
Yeah, and then he had said that when he was with the Islanders. He said, when they got Pajot, that was when he moved to the wing.
But again,
So
he's not yeah, to your point, but he's not Pajot. Pajot's a
no,
better
no.
player.
Mhm.
Especially defensively.
But
Pajot's a
he just
better
moved
player.
to the wing when the Islanders acquired Bajo.
And again, it's kind of going back to what I said, right? They're really good at that bottom six game. So if he doesn't stand up to that level, because it's a big role at center, right, versus
Yeah,
wing. If he doesn't perform to their liking, which again, their standards very high for bottom six guys, they're gonna shift him to wing,
yeah.
and we don't have that same luxury because I guess we kind of do, like Scott Lawton's a really good bottom six player, maybe one of the
Thompson
best in the
too.
league. Yeah, we have Nate Thompson. Albe Kubel looks really strong this
Mhm.
year, which
Yeah,
is, obviously I was talking about trading him, assuming that Allison's healthy. Now that
right,
Allison's out, it's like, thank God we have Albe Kubel, right?
right.
Because be a
The only
little
thing
thin there.
with NAK though is just the penalties.
Yeah, he did, yeah.
Like he had the 2 last night in that game, and then he had one that he got away with against Boston that Bill Meltzer had spotted, and I also said spotted it too. And I'm like, that was the biggest downfall with him last year was just how many penalties he
Yeah.
took.
Undisciplined play. And that
Yeah.
usually will get you benched at a certain
Mhm.
point if you continue to take bad penalties.
Yeah.
Which
And that game against the Capitals, he didn't look his best, but the game against Boston, he had like what 3-4 chances in the first like
he
7
looked
minutes.
actually that's a
And
great
those were
point.
chances he made for himself. They weren't anything like,
And he set up
someone set him up.
Lawton. He set
Yeah.
up Lawton for that the icer,
Mhm.
that end goal.
Yeah.
I think he's gotten stronger as the season has gone on,
Mhm.
or as the preseason's gone on. Which again, I think we'll just mention this again. I think people take preseason a little
Too
too
serious. Yeah.
seriously as
Mhm.
far as like production
Right.
points, because how many times have you seen a guy kill it in preseason, come into the season and not matter? It happens quite often, so it's not the same environment.
Yeah.
Again, I don't think the Flyers have been particularly great in the preseason, to be honest with you, and I think their record shows that. But I think there's a lot to work through, right?
Mhm.
You got 3 new defensemen,
They've had
you got a
different
new
lineups every night.
goaltender. Yeah, you got a new bottom 6 essentially. But I will say they've been a poised team.
Yeah.
Even when they went down against Boston and they were down 4-1, they still came back in, put in another goal. The game didn't get away from them, even though they were outmatched. It was never like a point where you're like, wow, they're just getting slaughtered.
Yeah.
That has not happened once. No matter what. Again, we couldn't see the game against the Islanders, where the last one where they just lost 3-0. But
I mean, it was streamed, but still, it was.
oh, I was out to dinner, so I couldn't watch it.
Yeah, I didn't
Um,
watch it either. I was at the movies.
Unfortunately, yeah, I had a birthday dinner where
Yeah.
we went to Chima, if you've ever heard of that Brazilian steakhouse, and I ate so much that I literally passed out when I got home. It was embarrassing, and yeah, probably not going to do that again.
I'm
All
sure
right.
you felt that this morning on your run.
Oh, I didn't run today because I felt too
No.
fat, felt too heavy, but I did lift, did extra lifting. I'm at 7 days a week now. I don't take a single day off from working out.
Good for you,
Yeah.
dude.
I
Absolute
can't.
grind.
I honestly, I don't know if I can go back with that. It's like an addiction at this point. All right, so
Dude, you were
let's.
in Israel. You didn't take a day off.
I didn't. I took 1 day off the entire 2.5 months,
You're like a
even
gym
with
dog.
sightseeing and whatnot.
Yeah.
Like when I would go over, I'd run, whatever. I'd find something every day.
Yeah. I'd see your Instagram post. Be like, oh my god, this sounds brutal. I still do it anyway. Like,
Yeah, dude. Oh my god, the sun there, it's like Arizona sun because the
yeah.
desert.
Mhm.
And yeah, my times were not good.
Yeah.
So let's get back to it here real quick. So after the Washington game, the Flyers put up another, I would say, decent performance because they outmatched the Bruins in this game. But the Bruins bottom 6 guys, they put up a good fight. There was times in that third period where they really had the Flyers hemmed in, and this is kind of what I was talking about, is when these bottom 6 guys get rolling against the Flyers and they just keep it really simple, and it's like a dump and chase, play physical, that's what hurts this team a little bit. The whole lineup was not in, but it does make me think, and maybe you don't agree with me on this, like I could use another physical player on this team, at forward for sure, like somebody big, like, and maybe that's why I was bringing up Kevin Hayes. Is like
I think that's why. I
we
think
do
that's where
need
you
a
miss
new point.
Allison.
Allison for absolutely. I was relying on him for that role as well because he's much bigger than Albay Kubel.
Like he had some hits in the rookie game before he got hurt
And
that were like, holy shit. Like
yeah,
he
it's a great
leveled a
point.
couple guys.
But he's also, I do agree with that, but I think my mindset is still more of a veteran guy. Like I like Thompson, but it's almost like Tyler Pitlick. I know you love Pitlick, right?
I
Like
love Pitlick.
we need another guy like that who's just high energy, jump like Albay Kubel with more experience and less likely to take bad penalties.
Yeah.
I think it's something. I
That's
think it's
literally
something we
Tyler
need.
Pitlick. That screams Tyler Pitlick. And
Yeah,
that's why I
exactly.
think the Flyers have not necessarily. And I know Fletcher's said this before that he wishes he signed. And I'm not going to sit here and harp on him not signing him, because it's done and over with now, and it's 2 years ago. But yeah, I mean, it would have been really nice if they had kept Pitlick because everybody kind of thought like how
He was a
good
great
Albay
fit.
Kubel looked. Yeah, and it was also because of how good Albay Kubel looked. Everybody was kind of like, oh, he should just gel right into that. And he just didn't. Like everything that we like literally everything we expected just did. I mean, we've said this so many times. But we all expected him to kind of just gel into that and then have more of the offensive game along with it.
Yeah.
And Pitlick was also a guy that even when he was physical, he had a lot better hands than people realized. Like he was very good in the
First round
corners.
pick.
He was very good in the corners. He had a pretty good wrist shot. Like
he's
was,
it's another Scott Lawton type of guy. I think Lawton's a little bit better, but all around. But again, he's got a great motor.
Too.
Lawton. Yeah. I think Lawton's about to hit another level.
Very noticeable in camp.
Yeah. I just had a show with Steve Cornianos. He loves Scott Lawton. He calls him an elite defensive center. And I think he's going to be like a fine wine type of player. Like he's a guy who probably will hit his peak when he's 30.
I have a feeling he's going to have an outbreak getting goals this year. I think
could definitely happen.
I've talked to a lot of people and they've been saying around like 12 or like 11. I'm like, I think he's going to get like 15, 16.
I totally see that. I think it depends how the team plays all year round. Like if we have another one of these dips where we have trouble scoring or we play poorly, or the PK is a mess, then I could see him back to what his usual reliable is. But if we play the way we're supposed to play, I mean, he's talented enough to score 20 goals in the league at one point. If he's in the right situation. Right now, he's going to be playing bottom six, but
right, and that's going to hurt him, scoring. But I think if he doesn't get hurt, which he most likely won't, he hasn't had many injuries.
Knock on every piece of wood I can find.
But yeah, I mean, I think for the most part, it's like if he can play the full year, I seriously can't see him not having a breakout year offensively.
Yeah, I think
only 82 games.
I think that's why he got that large contract because he is probably one of the best defensive centers in the National Hockey League. At this point, that's like not an elite guy. Like most teams won't really know who he is. Most fans don't really care who he is. But that's what you get at the end of the first round. This is what you were hoping Scott Lawton could turn into is a Mike Richards without the same offensive talent, ability to, kind of make plays and, because he can. When he's playing against bottom six guys, he makes plays. I think it's a big year for him. Let's talk about Rasmus Ristolainen a little bit since we're talking about physicality. I love how this is maybe probably more of a Twitterverse thing, but I love how the complaints about him have completely disappeared.
Yeah. I think the thing is, go ahead.
Well, the only reason I want to say that is because one, he's looked good. Two, he's not playing in that number one role again, and he brings an edge that most people have been waiting for. It's almost like Fletcher knew what he was getting.
Yeah.
And people were, again, and I think they're doing it to Martin Jones a little bit right now. People just panic like super quickly. They just can't see how a player can evolve or be put in a different situation and do well. But I think he's primed to be a big part of this lineup for this year.
Yeah, no, I do too. And I've said this to Jamie before. I'm like, dude, like when I was at training camp and up there and I'm covering everything, and a lot of what I kept hearing from Twitter or whatever was anytime he made a good play, it was, everybody was looking at it. Oh, it was a really nice play, whatever. But anytime he made a bad play, it was everybody would just point it out. And I think that's the problem with Ristolainen is all you're going to see is every time he makes a mistake, it's going to be pointed out. And then there's going to be, he sucks. He's this, he's that. He's because he's on Buffalo and everything like this. Like all I'm looking for Ristolainen to do is just play solid defensively. That's it. And I think he's done that in the games that we've seen him. I think he's done that perfectly. He's had a couple big hits. The game against Boston had 2 big hits in the first handful of minutes. The one right at the bench, the other one on the other side of the glass near the red line. Had a couple hits on Hathaway that last game against Washington that he played in. And again, I'm looking to see what he brings on Friday night against the Caps too, because it's probably going to be an A lineup against an A lineup since the Capitals are going to be at home, and I believe it's their last game for the preseason as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's a lineup versus A lineup, and we see what Ristolainen brings. But I think, one thing I love about him too is that he gets his shots through to the net. Like 5-on-5 or power play, if we've seen him there. And that's what I love about Ellis too, is that his shot gets through the net like crazy.
Ellis. Dude, Ellis is exactly as advertised so far. He shoots every opportunity he has, which is something that I think Provorov needs to learn a little bit from. Like, this team's still passing up shooting opportunities that it's not necessary to.
Not as much though. Not
as much, but I'm noticing times where like guys who weren't on the team last year are more prone to shooting than guys who than the guys who are already kind of legacy players. But I think there's gonna be a big influence there with Provorov and Ellis. But to your point on Risto, I think, look, he was used on the power play in Buffalo. He put up 3 40-point seasons in a row. The guy can move the puck. The guy can shoot. The guy can skate. He was taken high. The expectations were always really high for him. I don't think he's ever going to be that number one guy that he's being used in Buffalo, especially in a team. And again, remember, Taylor Hall looked like crap in Buffalo. Like, good players look bad there. So I think he's going to be really, really serviceable. Yeah. The fact that we have so many defensemen who can do that, like Sanheim, he's not as physical, but he has all the skill sets that you want for a defenseman. Yandel is like not physical, but again, has all the skill sets that you're really looking for in a defenseman. We have a defensive crew that's really capable right now. And I think Ristolainen is kind of like the icing on the cake right now. I think it's some of the stuff we were hoping that Myers could bring last year. It looks like Risto is stepping in. And fairness, he's much older and much more experienced.
Still young now. He's only 26.
He's not. Yeah, it's a good way of putting it. He's not that much older. He's much more experienced, right? Because he started at 19.
19? Yeah.
Yeah, 19. He got drafted and put, again, something that always is not a good idea with defensemen.
And they did it with Dahlin too.
Yes. At least Dahlin, his ceiling is still number one defenseman. But if you put these guys in like a bad position persistently every season, you're going to stagnate their growth.
Yeah.
For sure. So, do you want to talk? Well, I guess we couldn't watch the last game, unfortunately, right? So we can't really talk too much about the Islanders.
I heard
game.
Jones had a great game. That's one thing I kept saying. Jones looked really good.
Yeah, well, I heard he was solid. So that means he wasn't responsible for losing. Which
I think 2 of the goals were power play goals.
Do you? I don't even think that. I don't know why. People are going to call me a fanboy. I keep getting called a fanboy, but I'm not concerned about Martin Jones. Like, I never went into this season being like, oh my God, what's going to happen? I didn't
100% love the signing. I think there was some other options.
Sure.
But I'm at the point now where it's like, if the dude can come in and play, then just let him come in and play. Like, I'm not really going to, again, it's the preseason. I'm not going to overanalyze what Jones has done and what he hasn't. Like, it's not, to me, if these literally, I'm not looking for anything crazy out of this team this year. I just want them to play better.
People didn't. Well, to your point, people didn't like Elliott either, and he played well here. And people complained about him also.
Yeah, he was one of the biggest reasons why that stretch in the 2019-20 season, when they had went through like a little bit after the All-Star break when Hart was hurt. He was one of the biggest reasons why they won some of those games against top team. Well, not really top teams at the time, but teams that they were like neck and neck with, like Columbus, Florida. They had some games there where Moose really stole the game. Like that.
Yeah,
He
had some great performances.
The Hayes overtime winner in Columbus, Moose was great in that game. Like there were some bad defensive plays and a couple of goals that were like, but like for the most part, Moose had a lot of games like that where he kept them in it. The road game against the Penguins that year, I was actually in attendance for that game. They ended up losing in overtime when Crosby scored a couple seconds in. Moose was great in that game. I mean, that was like a playoff atmosphere type game, like sellout in Pittsburgh. Like it's a good game, and Moose played well. So again, I don't know how it's going to be. I feel like a lot of people are really underestimating how many games Jones is going to play, because I think they've talked about that with the way that the Flyers schedule is, especially in the first month of October. You go the 4 home games, and then you have the Canada road trip. And I don't necessarily remember who they play after that, but I know it's the split of home and road and things like that. So again, it's going to be very odd how they do that, because I think there are some people that are thinking that Jones might only play like 25, 30 games, but then again, I definitely could see him playing more than that, just because of the way the Flyers schedule is. And then obviously you have the Olympic break in there too. So
we got some breaking news here.
What?
I just got an email from the Flyers. Morgan Frost has been sent to the AHL Phantoms, along with Linus Sandin, Tyson Forrester, Isaac Radcliffe, and Linus Hoegberg. Cal O'Reilly also has been sent down. And then these guys were reported earlier today: Adam Glendening, Gary Mayhew, German Rubtsov, and Connor Bunneman. So it looks like Morgan Frost did not make the team out of camp. And we were just talking about this before we went live. There was a rumor. We obviously wouldn't report on a rumor on here. But there was kind of rumors that he didn't make the team. I got a couple calls from Jamie, so he was probably anticipating this. Yeah. So it looks like Morgan Frost did not make, again, just because he didn't make the team out of camp does not mean he won't be with the team moving forward. It doesn't mean he can't get called up. It just means that they don't think he's ready. Right. Let's talk about this.
Yeah, right. It's breaking news. How do we not?
Yeah, but this is important. Right. So we both were saying this about Frost. He had some good offensive opportunities. He has not looked great. Again, I was nervous about putting him in a top 6 position coming into the season. I'd rather see him as in a third line position. But it seems like this send down is kind of like a, hey, you're not ready, but you're close type of thing. What do you think, actually? Let me open up to you. What do you?
Well, I mean, again, as I mentioned to you before, the game against, so this is a funny story, and this kind of ties into the whole thing with Frost. I had started making a highlight video of certain plays that I liked from Frost and certain ones that really caught my eye, because that game against Washington, he really did catch my eye.
Yes, he made some very nice
5,
plays.
6, 7 times. And I purposely kept repeating it in the video because, again, he caught my eye a lot, because he was, to me, blatantly invisible in the game against Boston on the road.
Yes.
So I was thinking to myself, all right, well, YouTube only really posts the highlights of preseason games. You can't really find anything else. So I had their game recorded because I had work that night, so I watched it when I got home. So I go downstairs yesterday afternoon, and I go to start taking video of everything, of things that I liked from Frost and plays that stood out in my mind, because I had them all still fresh in my head. Well, long story short, my dad ends up deleting the recording, so I couldn't go down and do that. But nevertheless, yeah. So from there, I was pissed, and I was like literally just my luck, because there's TV shows and like movies that'll be recorded that my parents will record, and they'll sit there for like 4 months in the DVR box, and this game gets deleted 2 days after it happens. I'm like, this is just my luck. But anyway, again, the reason I am bringing that up is because there were a lot of plays that he had. There was a couple plays, especially in the Washington game, where he would, like, there was one where Hathaway was going around the other side, a couple stick lifts on him. Yandel made a nice pass over to Farabee. It was a scoring chance. He had I think it was a stick check off the wall that bounced. It was a crazy bounce, but it came out and JVR went up behind him and almost scored in front. Like he just had, it was like the little things that turned into the big things was what I noticed from him. Like he was making those smart plays that would turn into scoring chances. Sure. Defensively against Boston, he was better, but offensively not as much. Like Lindblom had a nice setup for him where he, took away the icing and sent it in front and he almost scored. He had a couple of chances on the power play, a couple good breakouts. I think he was tied or might have led the team in hits or might have been one behind. I think he was tied with Ellis with 4 hits. And physically, he wasn't there, but there was a couple of plays where he would move off the wall and set up guys. Like there was a play, still the dying seconds of the first against Washington. He made this play on, I think it might have been Schultz. He came off the wall. Like, how he does that little like quick move off the wall where he'll kind of freeze for a second and then go? Well, he did that and sent it in front of Farabee, but he didn't get a shot off because he got checked. But it was like the little things that turned into the big things. Like Frost, like everybody talked about how he looked good and, how he looked bigger and stronger or whatever. I'm like, okay, that's great. Like, it's good to hear that, but like, you got to play like it too. Like you can't just continuously say it and then just play the exact same. So if I'm thinking about it, I'm like, all right, he didn't necessarily look physically engaged in the first game against Boston. Well, the second game against the Capitals, he looked better. He had a couple plays where he looked stronger defensively and made some good plays on the puck along the wall and used his body. And I think he did that.
Not to completely cut you off, but just to go back to my previous point, when a player does poorly, like we were talking about York, and the whole team does poorly, when the whole team is dominating and you're dominating too, you know what I mean? It's also important to pay attention to that, right? Where it's a little bit easier on him in that game against the Capitals too, because the rest of the team was rolling. But sorry, go ahead, please.
And and I think again in that Boston game, he looked good defensively, but I think he might have maybe, again, I don't know this because I don't know Frost and I don't know anything that happens in the room, but I don't know if he maybe focused more on the defensive side of the puck in that game and maybe toned away from the offense or maybe just the way the game played out for him. I don't know. But I noticed him more defensively in that game, in the last game against Boston, than I did offensively in the game against Washington. So,
well, look, I think it's also important to note, and I'm sure people are going to ignore this factor. He missed all of last season, essentially. So he's missed a lot of hockey of late.
Sorry.
No, it's all good. He's missed a lot of hockey of late. So it's important to recognize that he's not in the best game shape coming into the season. Like even a guy like Tanner Lazinski lost a lot of time too. He probably also wouldn't have made the team out of camp because of that factor. Mm-hmm. So it's important to remember that with Frost, that a lot of this could be them going, hey, like you're close on the offensive side. Like we're seeing it, but you're not in complete game shape, because there is some of that. And while he's bigger and stronger, that's not necessarily the biggest thing to him making the NHL. It's more about how he plays off the puck, right? When he doesn't have the puck. That's probably still the case. So it'll be interesting. I'm sure most people are going to harp on him and ride him. But I guess it is surprising just because it looks like the Flyers are going to have to shift their lineup now.
My guess is this Friday game, you're probably going to see Giroux at center.
You think Giroux?
I think G will start second line center.
And what, they put Farabee at the top, keep him with TK? You could definitely see.
That's why I think that last game was Farabee with Coots and TK.
Because I think that's
because I think if they keep that together, then
I think that's a good astute observation. I think there's a good chance that what you're saying is true. Most people probably won't like that, but quite frankly, Giroux can handle it. I would be interested in seeing if Derek Brassard can fill in that void for a little bit. I think he's looked strong. And then you can shift Lawton up to third line center also. And then you put Thompson as fourth liner.
The only problem with Lawton though is that I get worried then because it's like I feel like every time Lawton's out of the bottom six, it doesn't look good.
Well, no, he'd be in the bottom six, third line center.
Oh, right. Okay.
Right.
Oh, okay. I thought you said second line.
But to your point, he's less effective at third line center than he is third line winger or fourth line center, right? When he plays like a wing on the third line, he's more effective overall. So I agree overall with what you're saying, but you're trying to make it through the Kevin Hayes saga.
Injury,
But
right?
yeah, but no, I think there's a lot of truth to what you're saying, though. I mean, quite frankly, Giroux, not lately, but he used to be one of the best centermen in the National Hockey League. So it's not like you're necessarily putting a guy in there who can't handle that role.
Yeah, it's not like he's just gonna go in and play like absolutely jack shit. Like he's gonna. It's
I
Claude
actually,
Giroux.
I actually thought of it like this. If you do keep, I had this thought the other day, it just came back to me. If you do keep, let's say you go with Farabee, TK, and Couturier as your top line, okay, which I think is still pretty good, especially because Farabee looks amazing. He's probably, I wouldn't be surprised by next year's the best player on the team, outside of Couturier and G, I guess.
I was gonna say, are we forgetting we have Couturier here? Or?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that highly of Farabee at this point. The guy is sick. But anyway,
Yeah.
So the second line,
Future captain.
well, to your point, right? JVR is no longer with. I do think he's future captain.
I know.
JVR, yeah. JVR is no longer with Farabee, right?
Mhm.
So the lines are going now. Somebody I think who can help Giroux with the center position is somebody who I would say is probably the second best defensive. Well, he's the best defensive winger on this team. You can make the argument it's Lawton, but Oscar Lindblom.
Yeah.
If you put Oscar Lindblom with Giroux and then Cam Atkinson on the right side, who can also play defense really well and is also a goal scorer, all of a sudden they might help Giroux, not in the sense that Giroux needs help playing D, but they're very responsible players, so it doesn't put as much of an onus on him having to be the most responsible center. He can take a little more risk.
Line last year, very short time together, is actually right before the Flyers went down, like playing bad. It was Lindblom with Giroux and Albe Bell, and they had that comeback against the Penguins. That line had I think 2 goals. And
it's coming back to me now that you're saying it.
They had that line with Lindblom, G, and Albe Bell. Atkinson adding to that, holy shit, that's like icing on the cake. That I think that's perfect.
Right, and you shift JVR
right-handed element. You have another good defensive winger.
Exactly.
Atkinson and Lindblom, they've already been together through camp. You add Giroux to that, it's like, dude, that's like chef's kiss. There's
and I've stated over and over again that I've wanted to see Atkinson and Giroux play together. So maybe there's something there. And if Lindblom is back to where, and he looks good, if Lindblom is back to where he was, he is a very good defensive center or a defensive winger. So you're talking about two guys who can allow Giroux to play a more offensive game playing down the middle, right? Where if he plays a guy like TK, he's got to play a lot of D. If he plays with even NAK, right, who's actually not bad defensively, or JVR, who's not bad defensively, but also not he's not that fast.
Who would you think would be the 13th forward now?
Well, I noticed that Max Willman is still available. He was not cut, and to be honest with you, he hasn't looked bad.
Bonneman was also sent down.
Yes, which I'm not surprised about.
No, I know they.
I thought Tyson Forrester.
Do you know who wasn't though? Was Jackson Cates, who I don't necessarily think has looked bad.
I actually thought he looked really good the other night, and you might have nailed it, dude. Without Lazinski and without Allison,
dude, Lazinski's such a bummer.
I know
it is such a bummer.
It's a huge bummer. I'm honestly more bummed about Allison, but the severity of Lazinski's
it just sucks for Lazinski too. It's like it hurts
2 seasons in a row.
Yeah, and it's also personally, it's like, dude, this guy, you know what I mean?
It's like Morin. It's very similar to the Morin situation. We're just
even though that was made out to be that his leg was amputated off his hip with an ice pick or something, but
he'll be back this season. I mean, people forgetting that, but we could use, I was talking about physicality. I would have loved to see what Sam Morin would have looked like this season without that injury. Just coming in mean, angry, punch people in the face. He's that guy.
Right.
But hold on, what were we just saying? Oh, 13th forward. So dude, I think you bring up a great point. You're right. Jackson Cates, he's also, I think he's 25 now.
4.
He's 23. I thought he was
He
older
was
than that.
23 when they signed him.
Can you double check that for me, please, while I make this case? Not that I think you're wrong. I want to know for sure.
Mhm.
So he's a little bit older, right? He's in that crop with
He's
Lazinski.
24.
He's 24. Okay,
Mhm.
so we're right in the middle of what we said.
Yeah.
So
97 birthday.
okay, so he's of age, right? He's a physical guy. He's a guy you can sit. He's a guy you can put in the lineup.
Yeah.
I think Max Willman is also very interesting and clearly a guy the organization really likes. It's interesting. I could see Jackson Cates being the extra forward for
Yeah.
sure. I mean, at this point, because
At the start of the season, yeah. I think they'll start the season with 6D. Because you don't really need the 7th defenseman for the first 4 home games.
I don't disagree. And well, Nick Sealer, I think
He'd
he'd have to go through, but he'd have to go through waivers, and he could get snagged. Nick Sealer could get snagged. Like Glenn Denning
he didn't get put on waivers though. It was Glenn Denning.
Right. So I'm saying I think he made the team. I think Sealer's made the team. I mean, I think
look good. I mean, like we got
he might have made the team
from Cowboy. Like looks like I agree.
I didn't even notice that we had comments. I had the private chat open. I only saw. Oh my God, there's people in here. Sorry guys, I did not see. I would have acknowledged some of this.
People in here. We got a lot of people.
Well, glad it's going well.
Yeah.
No, So it's interesting because you're not going to bump down Frost to a bottom 6 role, right? I mean, bottom 6, yes, if he's third line center, but you're not really going to use him there. Isaac Ratcliffe is not ready for a 4th line role, right? It's another guy who needs more time. There's really not that many guys outside of Jackson Cates, now that you're mentioning it, that can really, because again, without Allison, without Lazinski, I mean, maybe Ratcliffe, I do know about your time limit, so we got 7 minutes here.
Yeah.
6 minutes now.
Right.
So all right, how do you want to close this up? What should we talk about at the end? Oh, I do want to talk about one thing, actually. Sammy Tumala. I think it was very interesting that he was put on. What's up, buddy? Yeah, we talk on Instagram every now and then.
Yeah.
I love it. He's got funny.
Oh, dude. There's times where I'll sit there, man. I crack. Like I literally have a lot of tears in my eyes. Is that funny?
Well, it's good stuff. Keep on bringing in Joel Fairman.
Yeah, keep bringing up the memes. Makes the season more fun.
But I did want to mention about Tumala, and I think this also has a little bit to do with the injuries that were occurred. But they could have sent him to the OHL. They chose to keep him with the AHL. Yes,
he still can, but I think him getting sent to the AHL is a lot better. Like
they could have sent him back a while ago.
I don't remember who it was, but it wasn't Tony Androkidis made a point here. I forget what players it was, but I have to figure it out now on Twitter because that's going to bug the living shit out of me if I can't find it. Because there were a couple guys before. Here it is. Yeah. Hag joined Phantoms camp at 19. He ended up staying in the AHL that year. And Torensky was added to the Phantoms camp 1 year, but the Flyers elected him to send back to junior for his overage season. He said it can go either way. They'll give Tuamala a shot in AHL camp.
Well, Torensky was not a European player. Hag was. Mm-hmm. So they have the luxury with Hag because I don't think Tumala played in the OHL. I think he was planning on going there. But he was a European player, so I think he can come in with no problem.
Well, he also did say he wants to go to the AHL. Like
Tumala?
Yeah.
Well, I think the way I read it is that his offensive gifts are just like Forrester are already ready for the NHL. Or not NHL, I'm sorry, AHL.
Yeah.
I don't know if his overall game is there. And I haven't really gotten to see him, and I missed Dev Camp because I was in Israel.
Availability, the offense, if he can get himself open, he looks great. His shot in like the one-on-one drills and the shooting drills, his shot is just, there aren't any that have a shot like him in prospects. McLennan, maybe a couple other guys, but he's up there.
McLennan's good. What's it called? Steve Cornianos talked about Tumala and on the last podcast we had together, and he's very high on him. He's like, I thought he should have been a first round pick. Yeah. So I think he's the type of guy where I've talked about this before. He's a boomer bust guy. He's probably never going to be a guy who's going to play in your bottom 6. But I think maybe that's what the Flyers see, is that they see, hey, this is a top 6 forward in the AHL right now. We don't have Allison. Lazinski's out. We don't have many goals. We have Forrester, right? Who's probably going to stick with the team. Obviously, he's
Right.
obviously looks great. We lost
Well, he did get sent
Wisdom.
down too, Forster.
Well, I'm saying to the AHL squad.
Oh, okay, yeah.
He's never going back to juniors,
Oh,
right?
no.
I know it's obviously not a question at this point, but yeah. Chris, I didn't even get to look at your fantasy team.
Yeah. Oh, God. Yeah. All right.
We got 3 minutes. Guys, we got 3 minutes. Chris is a hard stop. Yeah, if you want to end on that, we can end on that.
Yeah.
I probably still have it in front of me.
Yeah, it's in our text. Yeah, dude, it's sick. Like the fact that I got
how many teams?
16.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah. Dude,
it's a big league.
Because Joel set the draft as like a minute 30 for every pick. So it was like a minute and 30 seconds. So when guys weren't in the draft, we probably only had like maybe half of the league do the draft. So we had to sit there and wait an hour, or not an hour. It was probably like 2 hours and 20 minutes, the entire draft. Yeah. Started at 10. We didn't get done till probably 12:30 at night. Oh my God.
Yeah.
I was like, this guy's such a bonehead. No, I'm kidding.
Did you hear that Donald Trump meme come up, or is that just me and my? I think it's from our chat. As you were talking, I heard Donald Trump go, "I'm gonna come."
That's
Sorry
great.
For the disruption. Let's talk about it real quick.
Yeah.
All right. So you got Kucherov and Point. I mean, those are humongous wins. Svechnikov, it's essentially a superstar all-star team here. Svechnikov, you got that nailed. Farabee, probably, like I said, going to be a big breakout year for him, most likely. On top of that one, Bavillier, saying it earlier, goal scorer through and through. Fiala, fantastic pickup from Minnesota. JVR, obviously, a very good pickup, probably power play points included in him. Voracek looks like he's going to have a great season playing for Columbus. He's already putting up points and playing on their top line. So really no downside there. Yamamoto, very talented player. I mean, I think that's kind of maybe a little boom or bust for you, but I think the boom could be very rewarding. I don't know if a bust is even there, but he could be a very high point producer this year, or just like an average guy. Quinn Hughes signed. You're all good there. Sarnak, I mean, obviously very good. Great team. Justin Schultz, offensive defenseman, shouldn't be any problems there. Ethan Bear is going to play a big role with Carolina, so another good pick. Marino, I actually don't know too much about him, but he's on the Penguins. He's a defenseman, so most likely he's going to exceed expectations. It seems to be the trend there. Riley Smith, I mean, again, another really good pickup. Maybe declining, probably not.
Yeah, but Vegas is Vegas.
So. Exactly, and he's still in their top 6, so there's no downside there. Ryan Ellis, potential to have a career year this year with the role he's going to be playing with the Flyers and playing with Provorov. Might be his best partner, quite frankly, that he's had outside. I guess Roman Josi. I don't think he played that much with Josi, but yeah. And then Oscar Lindblom, again, resurging season. That could be a humongous win. Shattenkirk, offensive defenseman, on the worst team in the league, but again, will have a huge role for them. So he could end up maybe a minus player, but putting offensive points up for sure. And then Cizikas, which I assume are hits included in this?
Hits and block. That's why I took Chernak.
Yeah.
Then Chernak is a monster with block shots.
Yeah, so that's what I was saying. Chernak, Cizikas. Yeah, I mean, this is a dope team. Freddie Anderson is a goalie. He'll probably do well because he's got a good defense in front of him. John Gibson is one of the most talented goalies in the league. Rough team, but whatever. But then you got Sorokin in front of one of the best defensive teams in the league. So you really can't go wrong. So you have an all-star squad. There's a good chance you will go far in your league, in my opinion.
I'm in another league with, I don't know if you know him, Travis Ballinghoff. He does the media for Nasty Knuckles. He does all the behind the scenes. And
I haven't met him, though.
It's like, it's for money. The first place winner gets like $520. So I'm really, and it's like the same thing. And I think I have around a similar pick. I had the 6th overall pick. And I was on the phone with Aaron Bone, and we're sitting there, and he's another writer for Nitty Gritty. Obviously, you know him, Yariv, but
shout out to Aaron.
Yeah, what a guy. We're sitting there, and the two of us were just grinning from ear to ear with how many good players were left, because a lot of the guys were just in like auto picks, and we're like, dude, we're flipping through, and like Miro Heiskanen didn't get taken to like the 11th round. I'm like, dude, like, like some of the picks were just insane. But yeah, it was.
I didn't even do fantasy draft this year.
Oh my God.
I can't. I don't have enough time. I don't have enough time to manage it anymore.
Oh, I don't have time.
It is fun as hell, but I just don't have the time. The most fun part is drafting, honestly.
Yeah.
And managing your lineups is a pain in the butt.
Oh.
All right, Chris, I think you need to jettison off air.
I do, yeah.
Guys, we're officially back. We're gonna try to do one of these a week, for sure. So if you're on, look out for them. They're gonna be weird times for now until maybe we figure out some kind of cadence. But we got to work around Chris's work schedule, which is at night, and my work schedule, which is during the day. So
and then the games, and then whatever other shit we have planned. So yeah.
And I was actually supposed to record with Ryan Marker at this time, but Marker had to cancel last minute. So maybe next week, maybe this week. So I don't know about getting gritty with it if you guys are following that. So, all right. Anything else you want to say, my friend?
Go Flyers.
Go Flyers. I like that. All right. So guys, subscribe to both of us if you can. Share it out. That's
our Twitters too. That's perfect.
Yeah.
For a lot of our stuff.
Yeah, and if you can share out our stuff, that's also humongous help. So anything like that is always a huge help. So thank you so much for sitting with us. Next time we'll probably go longer because usually we go an hour and a half to 2 hours.
2 hours, yeah.
But we're just time strict. Okay.
Right.
Yeah. Remember to be excited about the Flyers, and remember, don't panic.